All right, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the virtual edition of the Matt Black Podcast, where we discuss sports, music, politics, movies. If it's in the culture, it's in
It's
the
in the show.
show. You already know, man. First of all, this feels weird, man, for us not to be in studio
Indeed, brother.
chopping it up.
Indeed.
Um, yeah. But I'm still glad to be here, my brother. How you been, Just?
I've been good, man. I've been good. Just getting used to the normal of where we are. You know how that is, brother. Everything is virtual with little spots of, face to face physical contact. So this is kind of the world as we know it.
Yeah, man. And I remember when this originally started in March, I could have swore that by this time we were going to be out of this pandemic.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and now here we are, November, and
Still in it. Still
we
in
are
it.
very much still here. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's just the sign of the times, man. But one of the things that I kind of feel like has been the main theme is that we've been dealing with a lot of issues in culture. And so the biggest divide that I've seen just from people, bro, has been essentially where to place your allegiance to, or where's your identity found.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I think we're seeing that obviously through the main line of political party, um, in light of people putting a lot of their hope in their cards in that space.
Yeah.
And my question to you, man, is just so that we can start off is like what do you believe the believer should be doing during this time? Because no matter who our president is, there's still a responsibility for us um, to live in such a way to where our practical lives look um, in line with the mandates of Jesus. But
Yeah.
it seems as though we're getting mixed up. So, what do you believe the believer should be doing during this time? How should we be seeing the political climate and even the argument that's surrounding the church in political issues?
To be quite honest, I think that however you vote, however you get involved with the politics, should be your position. Whether that's you are leaning more towards the Democrat side, whether you lean more towards conservative side. Obviously, there are many different um, ideals. There are many different stances. There are many different focuses. We know abortion and all that good stuff. But I think that after you voted, after you've done that job or that service, you can't leave it in the powers of the political party. That ultimately the power lies in God, Jesus Christ, right? And so I can't be so caught up in the propaganda. I can't be so caught up in the fear mongering that I'm on the edge of my seat and I'm fainting and I have no hope because whether there's a Democrat-led presidential, spot and the Senate turns that way and the Congress or vice versa, God is still in control. And I think what we miss is that God is using even these, you know, trivial times, the pandemic, the heightened view of this presidential race, people sending us texts and calling us randomly to see if we voted, right? That pressure cannot weigh us down so much where we begin to view that power as the ultimate source of power. And I think
Where
that's the biggest thing for
where do
me.
you believe this whole like go out and vote campaign comes from? Because here's the thing, like here's what I've been seeing, bro, and you can tell me
Right,
what you think about this. Like for me, there's been this like adamant, consistent hatred
yeah,
for Donald Trump and
right,
his administration and things of that nature. But when you get up close, for people who have this much hatred for Donald, and then you ask them, okay, so what is the affection truly of your hate? Like what is the object of your hate, the root
yeah,
of your hate?
yeah,
A lot of them can't articulate
nah, and
where
yeah,
it comes from. Maybe it's statements he made during his political run, and campaign to be president. It's maybe things that are seen in the media,
right,
but none of it's been policy related. None of it's been um, consistent with anything he's necessarily done since he's been in office per se. A
right,
lot of it has been just kind of feeding into what they've been given from the media as to what this man is like and what he's done, and then that's fueled this go vote
drive,
to get Trump out of office.
Yeah.
So like why do you believe that we are seeing such a I don't know, I guess a consistent permanent pull for people to be like, go vote, go vote, go vote, go vote, go do this, go do that. Why do you believe that is?
Well, I said this when Trump first came president, and I said, people were all up in arms about, how he was talking and some of the foolish, some of just the outlandish stuff that he said. And I said, you know what? Trump's presidency will bring about truthfulness in the world of where people really stand. And I think
Mm,
when we've looked at past presidents, whether that's been Clinton, Reagan, Bush, people didn't necessarily stand out the way they're standing out right now, whether it's in regards to race, whether it's in regards to sexuality, whether it's even in regards to this Christian nationalism of America. People were very low key and very covered, and so you never really knew where anyone stood. Well, when Trump comes out and he becomes president and he feels free to talk the way he's talked in the media, on Twitter, in his national addresses, it makes people that have a certain ideal or have viewed things a certain way, right? When he says let's make America great again, I mean we could sit here and argue about what that really means, but I know when that statement comes out, that makes a certain sect of people born in a certain sect of time act a certain way. And so once that happens, it puts people up in arms because it's okay to kind of think people are racist, but when people come out and say that they're racist, when they come out and say, well, black people should be doing this and we need to keep the Mexicans here. Like those
mm,
things create the world that we're in, right? And so at that point, it's really not about policy. Most of the times, people are like, we need to get the level of decency in America back. Which, I mean, has there ever been any decency in America? That's what I would say. I would argue that and say,
right.
we just been thrive. I mean, we've been trying to get along to go along to get along. But I think that's what it is. When you look at his talks and his addresses in totality and in context, there's some things that have some validity to them. Obviously, he needs a better PR team, and he needs some people that can, help him be quiet. Um, but I think when you have what you have, when you hear, hey, good old boy, stand back, all of these different things, it just makes people be like, yo, we got to get this man out of office because it's creating some harm and danger, whether he's the root of it or it's a byproduct of people feeling affirmed about who he is and what he said. So I think that's really what it is because when you do look at his policies, there's some good, there's some bad. That's with every president. But I think overall, it's the notion of what he's putting out into the atmosphere and where we stand. I mean, you and me as African American men, we see the Trump rallies, we see the flags on people's cars, we see like in my school, we had the Biden Harris campaign bus showed up because our school is a polling place. Well, as soon as
Mm,
they showed up, it was at least 30 to 40 cars of just Trump supporters and you know horns and all that kind of stuff. So you know, it brings about this ugliness, But I think if we don't confront it, then we go back to living this covered lifestyle of people lying about how they feel. And I think we have to have a better way to go about talking about it, whether that's police brutality, whether that's racial injustice, whether that's how we deal with the systemic oppression. You know, that's just what it is. People don't want to deal with the truth and the ugliness of it. So we'd rather have, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but we'd rather have somebody in office where we can all kind of just, hey, you do your thing, I'm gonna do mine, without confronting that stuff in a real way. If that makes sense.
yeah, I definitely think his impact on culture and people is definitely something to consider and think about, because I think yeah, the scales have been lifted, so
Yeah.
to speak. If
Right.
we talk about the way that Trump is brash and in some cases outlandish and very vocal about where he stands, what he believes, and
Yeah.
how he chooses to conduct himself. So I definitely agree with that. I think for me though is kind of I think what's getting lost is the where the believer should be placing their faith and trust, because
Yeah.
it seems as though that even those in the household of faith have bought into the lie that
Hmm.
by either getting him out of office or somehow if he's removed or if there's a new regime or if there's other more leaders in place, that somehow this world turns into utopia, or the um, things that we long for, as believers and grown for, um, God-sized gaps that only He can fill.
Yeah.
We seem to be putting that trust in. Um, in our ability to vote or in our ability to get involved. And the reality is we've lost the art of going to God directly.
Mm,
We
yeah,
don't seem to consult Him or look to Him as the ultimate source of peace and reconciliation. We want if he's removed or if this happens, then we'll receive the change that we're necessarily hoping for. And I don't get that, bro. I don't
right,
get that. I don't.
right,
I think that's where I jump off. Obviously, we know there's no political party that truly represents those who have a true biblical worldview and lens.
right.
Um, from that standpoint, but also when you think about what Trump has done in office, sometimes I wonder, um, are people just looking for more diplomacy or change? Because when you say Biden, or right, I know I'm about to step on some toes with this one.
Yes,
When you
sir.
say Barack Obama,
Right.
there's a lot more diplomacy there. The diplomatic nature, the swag, the
Yeah.
ability to articulate. He's a wonderful orator. Like
Right.
that type of stuff is fly, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you start getting into the nitty gritty of policy,
Yeah.
when you start talking about what has he actually done for you,
Yeah.
when you start talking about what goes beyond just him being a black man who makes history,
Yeah.
what exactly are we looking for? Because we're willing to claim Obama as president,
Right. 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 Right.
but
And
Trump is a huge problem because he's
but
outlandish,
I think that's
whatever.
what you hit on, man. I think it's this idea that we perceive the president to have a certain decorum about themselves, you know. And what I've noticed is when you research a lot of presidents, yeah, they can have decorum, but that decorum can hypnotize and it can cloud your judgment on the work that needs to be done. It's no different than the preacher that's very charismatic, is able to
Mm,
connect with people, but in the grand scheme of things, he's not leading the body the way it needs to be led. He's not, you know, preaching truth from a full biblical systematic format. You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to be very careful and we got to look at the facts. And it's hard to look at the facts when somebody's saying something you don't really like, right? Even if it's very racist or has hatred behind it, or it says you're from, S-hole nations, right? Though, but that's where I think those believers that are on the side of the conservatives and are super Trump, starch Trump fans, um, that's where we have to bring in the gospel. And we have to look at it from a biblical perspective because we said, if this person is talking like this, how can there be truth? Because truth without love, right, is just dogma at the end of the day. It's no
mm.
different if I'm just giving you love, right, in Biden's case with no truth. Then what are we really doing? We're handicapping folks. So I think it's understanding that, okay, yeah, the policies are great, but that's like saying that's like saying um, you're trying to give some. You talking to somebody and you've been knowing them for a while and you've been trying to disciple them, and you say, "Hey, man, your life is trash anyway." You know what I'm saying? You got this, that, and the third going on. When you just don't accept Jesus, granted, Jesus is a very great option. It's the best option in the world. But everything you said before that defamed and tore this person down when when the word of God can do that, but not the very words of man. Like when we tear people down, that's what Paul talks about the power, in the tongue that we tear folks down. And so I think what happens is a lot of times because they find their solidarity and identity in politics, they would lay aside a lot of biblical imperatives that you and me would say, well, this person has character flaws, like character issues in terms of leadership, right? And if we look at that from a pastoral standpoint, we would say, well, this person is not fit to be a pastor. Yes, there is some teaching and preaching ability, but there is some really big issues in regards of his character and how he deals with the common folk. And so I think when we look at Trump and just politics in general, like you have the side that's full of like decorum and diplomacy and this is the swag. Then you got people that's like, y'all need to get off y'all behinds. We're not putting in no systems. We're not doing all of this. This is why we say we can't lean on the political party because they lack the very essence and virtue of what the gospel brings, right?
Mm.
There's truth but no grace. There's grace but no truth. And God allows that to happen. He allows these parties to lean more towards one side so that we can lean more closer into the cross. And that when we vote, that our prayers need to still be lifted up, that God, through his sovereign and wisdom, or his sovereign power and his wisdom, can manipulate the things of the world for his glory as he's been doing since Genesis. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just for me, that's where it is. And I'm looking at people and I'm just like, you can't distort the gospel by saying we should be voting in this manner or we should be voting in that manner. You're giving people the wrong message. You know what I'm saying? Just the same on the same ticket. You can't tell people God wouldn't want this person in office and this, that, and the third. God will do what he wants to do. So if Biden wins, God has Biden in office and is going to use him in whatever capacity. But you can't defame those people and say they're not believers, just no different than I can defame my brothers and sisters that are Trump supporters. I can give you information, I can try to have conversation with you, but I'm not gonna tear you down. I'm not gonna discredit your faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And here's what I think it comes down to, not just in the conversation of political affiliation, but also in the unbalanced conversation that plagues the body of believers as it pertains to race.
Yeah.
It seems as though we don't want God's solutions. We want a king.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. For sure.
We
For
don't
sure.
want God's agenda to take place. We want a king, right? And it's the same issue that we've seen throughout biblical history and
Yeah.
in the history of the world in general. God sets parameters. We break those parameters. We scream and cry for another for another leader to come in. God grants our wishes. It's not what we want. Instead of returning to God, we just ask for a new leader, and we never return to the fact that God is like, hey, I've been here the entire time. Do you want to consult me now?
Right.
Am I enough now? And
Right.
I think that is the question on the table. Am I enough now? Right.
That's
And
good.
so even as we let's say we transition the conversation and we relate the two, I think I think people on the side of Christian equals conservative, or how can believers bypass the idea of gay marriage or abortion, and then that's why they hold so fast to the Republican Party. In the same way, they can argue that, oh, all these black people joining in with the BLM,
Yeah.
movement and things of that nature, and holding fast to the race argument. Like you want the solution that blacks reign supreme, let's say, in the country. Either way, let's just say that both sides or both extremes are correct, which they aren't, but
Right.
let's
Right.
just say that that's the case. Essentially, it all comes back to the fact that we haven't decided to look at the scriptures, find God's heart and his agenda, and decided to follow that. We've decided to uplift the very things that we hold dear, that we think are important, that we think take more, I guess, importance over what God has mandated, and we fight for those things
Yeah.
rather than finding the nuances and even the uncomfortable gray that the Lord wants us to live in.
That's
And
good.
so, yeah, man, I just think that we're in a space where our identities and our allegiance needs to be, hey God, what do you have for me
Yeah.
here? What
Yeah.
do you have? And not necessarily fall into the age old argument that Paul was trying to say, hey, am I of Paul? Am I of
Yeah.
like
Paulus. Yeah. Yeah.
am
For
I, am
sure.
I of Paul? No, I'm not. Like Christ Jesus is
Right.
who we look to, right? And so like I'm not gonna get caught up in the worldly dispute or even the right here, right now solution per se.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that asking for human dignity and worth is a right here, right now solution. I just think it's a godly principle, and so that's why I fight
Agreed.
for it. Um, and so, when I have conversations with my white brothers and sisters, or when I have conversations about race, it's never with the same agenda of the world, which is we need to be treated like this. Da, da, da. I'm not even on the campaign of necessarily fighting for reparations. It'd be nice, but if we don't get it, cool. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
Right. Right.
that's not the agenda for me. The agenda is, hey man, we are the Imago Dei. Can we be treated as such? You know what I'm saying? Um, and can we as much as possible honor the mandate in which God has given us all, is to love our neighbor. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
that's the idea. So politically, or racially across any lines, I just hope that we are thinking in that space as we have to move forward from the election, that is on our brains, as we have to enter into a new year of uncertainty, that is in the forefront of our minds, of pursuing the kingdom for what he says
Yeah.
is the way that we run things, and also not wanting a king but wanting the King of Kings. I
That's
hope that's where
good.
we land.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would totally agree, man. You know, when you seek after that king, what happens is you start to put all your trust in that, and God will allow that. God will permit you to find so much joy and solidarity in that, to the point where when you fall flat on your face, much like people did in the Bible and before, you are now reminded, this is why I cannot put my trust in man, because they are fickle. They are changing, and we serve a God that's unchanging. And so no matter where you vote, if you're voting on the side of, quote unquote, the people, because you want to create a place where Christ can be heard in a real way, right? Or you're voting on the side of conservatism because we need starch, systems, or foundation for things to keep going and stay true to whatever or whoever America is. At the end of the day, God, no matter where your vote lies, God wants to be king in your life. So that way, when people fall disenfranchised and disenchanted with those political parties after they fail them, because they will fail them, you have a message and you have a person in Jesus Christ that will not. And I think that's why it's scary when people get so caught up, is because it makes them relinquish their gospel work and message, and go ye therefore doesn't have the same conviction and power. Because we're thinking, if I go ye therefore and vote, I don't have to go ye therefore and do the work of bringing people to Jesus. And that's what it is.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's ultimately where it is. People, Jesus said, he said the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And so if you're voting for, Biden, or if you're voting on that side of the party because you want people to have opportunity and you want them to have space to be able to be helped and be nurtured and to be respected, well, what are you doing with your sphere of influence, right? If you're voting for Trump and you're saying, no, we need to make sure we stay, committed to the ideals of who Jesus is, well, what are you doing with your sphere of influence? Are you pushing and spewing out a legalistic mindset of, you shouldn't be doing abortions, you shouldn't be doing this, but on the backside we got money to do weed dispensaries and we got all of this, all in the name of business, right? And all of that, man, it comes down to, are you willing to work for Jesus, right? If you're willing
mm.
to work for Jesus, then whatever party's in play, it just gives you more energy to say, man, with my sphere of influence, with my family, people I work with, people that God is bringing into my life, I need to give them something consistent. That's what the Lord is really saying. Vote, whatever, but you need to be ready for when people are like, well, there go another president not doing what they said they was gonna do. There goes another Senate here and a Congress here. So that's ultimately where I'm at, bro, and that's ultimately where we should be as a people, to be quite honest.
Yeah, man. Last thing for me, man. I just hope that the same passion that I've been seeing from the body,
Yeah.
um, as it pertains to politics, as it pertains to even the racial, divide that exists, is the same passion that we could put forward into building God's kingdom
Yeah.
and into evangelism.
Yes.
I hope that we could take
Yeah.
that same fire that we're ignited by and say, how can I build a discipleship culture?
Right. Right. How can I
Right,
walk with people? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Because here's the crazy part: the very same people who land on the line of just preach the gospel are also the ones who probably land on the line of you should vote conservative, but neither of the parties that are fighting each other. I have not seen either one say, where can we go and build disciples, because that's ultimately the ultimate call. No one's ever saying, well, hey, no, keep your passion but just turn that into building disciples. No one goes that route. It's
Right.
always fighting for the other side of the
Right.
coin, which isn't the final story either.
And you
So if
would
we want
respect
to,
people that said that more anyway. If somebody said, "Hey, man, however you vote, let's just be committed to building disciples." Okay, I'm with you on that, bro. I may not agree, but one thing we agree on is building disciples for the kingdom of God. So whatever, however the political party plays itself out, we still on the same team. So you know,
yeah, man, I think that is honoring God in our disagreement.
yes,
I
amen,
think that is honoring God in our
amen.
disagreement, though.
Yeah,
Hey, man, I may not see things how you see them, bro, but I know that me voting this way or me leaning this way is going to aid me
yeah,
in the great commission that God has called me to.
for sure,
That's
for
where
sure.
I'm at, bro.
Yeah, that's good,
Yeah, man. Yeah, I wish we had more time to chop this mug up, bro.
indeed.
But that's why we got more episodes, and I'm glad we back, my brother. Let's get it
Amen.
in.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, man. So you know where it is, Matt Black Podcast. If it's in the culture,
It's in
it's
the
in the
show.
show.